Hello and welcome to Identity Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue. Today is episode 209. Before we get started, a quick reminder, please follow Identity Office Hours on LinkedIn or YouTube. That really helps us. The topic today is the 7 Laws of AI Identity. And as you can see, our guest today is Patrick Parker, co-founder and CEO at Empower ID. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. This is my second time on here, and I hope we have as much fun as we did the first time.
Yes, and so actually your episode was one of the most viewed episodes.
Awesome.
And it was episode 11 in May of 2024. So it has been a while.
It has. It's overdue.
And this topic, I picked up on. So the way I get my content is I'm unhealthily addicted to LinkedIn, and I read way too much stuff. And I saw your article, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting take on it. So the article is called "The 7 Laws of AI Identity," and I wanted to start by just so I put this into ChatGPT, and I said, give me concise definitions of these 7 laws. And then I edited them a little bit, but I thought it might be helpful if I just if we do like a really fast lightning round where I list these kind of 7 ideas individually, just to give us the context. And you can tell me whether ChatGPT and I got it right.
Okay, go for it. Happy to do it.
And by the way, my take on Identity Office Hours is that this is my office hours with you. Like, you're the professor, and it's my chance to ask you all my questions about this. So okay.
Feel free. Don't hold back. I'm happy to dive into anything esoteric, or even if I don't have an answer, we'll think about it together.
I'm still learning here, even after all these years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, right now it's like we all had to go back to school again, it seems like.
Yes. So law number 1, the law of the split actor, preserve who intended, authorized, executed, and was seen downstream.
Yeah, that's true. Because if you just said the identity was the user, or you said the agent, or you said the credential, then it would be a lie of omission. So you have to preserve the integrity of the chain of, was a human involved, was an agent involved, was there an approver involved? And otherwise, it'll be lead to confused agency about who really was responsible for this action.
Okay. Sort of like the who and who, what, where, when, why.
Exactly, yeah. There's many who's. Now there's multiple who's.
Okay, law number 2, generated intent. Why the action time authorization is necessary.
That is basically, now you're authorizing the noun, which is the agent, before you know the verb. So because the intent, there's a disconnect between my intent as a human and what I tell the agent, and then when the agent actually generates intent later and translates that into actions or tool execution, there's a big gap there. So we're authorizing the generated intent, which we don't know about in the beginning because it's non-deterministic, but we need to bound it.
I like the emphasis on the why there, though. That we have the who, and then the generated intent tells us the why. Why are we doing this action? Because this was the intent of the who, that maybe 5 steps ago.
And it comes later in the logging, but the thing that's important there is to capture in the proof logging, the receipt is what was the user's prompt, what did they utter, and then which values were user provided and which were inferred by the agent. And that's really the necessary information to help you piece it together, why it ended up executing the tools or actions that it actually did. And without that, you don't really know. There's a big gap between I said clean up my hard drive and it deleted my database. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of piece it back together and have that proof receipt and log that.
Okay. Law number 3, bounded agency. Constrain delegation by intent, scope, time, risk, and revocation.
Yes, because a lot of, and one of the reasons for the laws was try to organize my thoughts of how I was thinking about this when I was making agents and trying to get them to do smart things repeatably and predictably. And going to conferences and the discussions, everything would range from panic about never-ending agent meshes spawning agents and delegation chains, and then people would immediately flip in the same conversation and just they'd whitewash it and say, "Oh, on behalf of covers everything." But on behalf of is not a permissions model, and you really can't tell what happened. And if you just say, "Oh, on behalf of tokens, OBO is going to solve it." So you really need to have bounded agency, and always narrowing authority if you are delegating down a chain.
Okay. I don't think that has in the who, what, where, when, why. This seems to be more like the what. Like we can't. This is not everything. We got to constrain what we're doing based on this information.
In one of my classifications, it's part of defining the goal. It's bounding and defining what was the goal.
Okay. All right. So we are up to number 4. 4, continuous authorization, govern discovery, invocation, execution, and outcome. I really just call this one zero trust, like authorization, continuous authorization, or basically authorization at every step.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good. It's basically time of use, time of check. It's the old talk. How do you pronounce that? Talk to, because in an agent transaction, there can be a lot of different steps between the user utterance and the agent, the model, the LLM gateway, the context in the input, the MCP gateway, the tool execution, the executor, the unvaulting of credentials, the credential executor, and then the logging. So it's basically there's so many steps along the way. It's not that you authorize them at the entry point and then just kind of pass that along. You basically just have to do continuous authorization, hopefully with signals being passed in so that that your information is always accurate and up to date.
Right. Okay. I think everyone's on board with that.
Yeah, and I'm happy that agents are actually pushing that finally, because we all wanted that. We all knew we should do it, but legacy applications and legacy approaches kind of prevented us from forcing the issue and getting that done.
And so number 5, least exposure, minimize agent access to data, tools, context, and credentials. Sort of like least privilege, one could say.
And there's some interesting things because you have the agent, and the agent is operating in what everybody likes to say now, the harness. And the harness is what governs and controls the agent and its access to everything in the outside world. And basically, a lot of people are saying that now the harness is more important than the model, because we need to make the harness and the tool smarter and to control the model. So this says, well, I don't want my agent to ever see a tool that it shouldn't know the existence of tools that it can't invoke. It shouldn't ever hold a credential. Even if a user tries to paste a credential into the agent chat, something in the harness should block it from ever getting into the model context. Schema pinning for tools. So basically, it's just the agent and the model live in like the matrix, and you are the architect that controls the world they live in, and you need to make sure for security purposes that the world they live in is restricted to just what they need to do for that particular task or job.
Okay. So make sure the model only has need to know information, basically.
Yes. Yeah. And then you can get a lot done between the agent executor and the tools without ever involving the model. It doesn't really need that information. It just needs to solve the problem. But then the actual information for the execution, why does it need that? You don't want that exfiltrating into the model context.
Okay. Number 6, justifiable action chains. Which participants may, and so this one I actually I went back and forth with ChatGPT a little bit. I'm boiling this down to which participants may be trusted. Which runtime, which MCP servers do I trust? What tokens do I trust from what issuers? And because I think that's what it really boiled down to. So I don't know if you agree with that. It was
It does. It does.
viable
It's
action claims was
trying
the
to prevent poisoning of the action or supply chain along the way. Yeah, that because participation is an implicit authorization of some sort. So yeah, you got to really control that.
and then the last one is proof carrying action. Produce tamper evident proof of authority, execution, and outcome to prove what happened in the past.
Yep. And this is a tough one. This is because you have to kind of move the point of control one step farther down the track than people are currently thinking about. Because at the gateway, all you can log is that, yeah, the agent was authorized and it was to execute this tool. But you can't produce this proof carrying action. You have to kind of go one step further into the governed execution, is what we're calling it, to where you actually know what got executed, what really happened, what was the, and put together not a log, because the logs are just going to show the final credential or identity or token use, and that's it. So you have to know that credential or token, who unvaulted it, under whose authority. Did the model and agent get it, or was it brokered execution? What was the delegation chain? Was this agent delegated by this user, or was it an agent sub-delegation from an agent delegated by an entity that's not a user? So to capture all that, you really have to be one more step in the chain where you're not just authorizing and then you have everything after that. The actual execution is the blind spot. So this one's a little bit different than people are typically thinking about in logging, because logging is not going to solve the problem. And this needs to be tamper proof, needs to be hash chain. So, it can pass DORA and other types of regulatory compliance, AI, EU AI legal requirements, etc.
I mean, it sounds like you're talking about observability and having the runtime execution be observable. That happens behind the decision that got made at the gateway. But if we have zero trust and we have authorization everywhere, then potentially we have visibility about what happened sort of at the system level versus in the gateway level.
Yeah, and beyond the gateway, because the gateway just says, oh, you can use these tools, but then it doesn't really know typically the whole chain, and it doesn't know what actually got executed. And you kind of have to go a level deeper, and basically, we call it governed execution. You generate kind of an envelope or a contract that the executor is going to check and ensure that the actual execution is bounded against what was authorized in the contract, which is a little bit more deeper into the values, et cetera. And then at that time, it can log the whole thing if you have that extra step.
Okay, so we did that fairly expeditiously. Let's see, we're 13 minutes in, so we're about a third of the way in.
Cool.
But I think that's good, because I always liked, if the title is the 7 Laws of AI Identity, I feel obligated to at least say, so to always make sure we address the title before we go into some tangent about some other interesting topic.
Now it's tangent time, right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So I guess my first question is, are these really laws, or are these more like architectural recommendations?
I tried to go with, I was inspired by Kim Cameron and the impact that his laws of identity had on as something that you can use to proof test or crosswalk something you build against it. Not that they're, you can say they're laws because if you're using them, just to proof check something, then you can implement them as laws where you can say, does this new standard or this new model of enforcement pass or fail on these laws? That doesn't mean they're laws. It's kind of, it's just to get the discussion started and try to organize my thinking and see if like-minded people organize their thinking, or it just starts off something else that we produce that supersedes this and makes the conversation even clearer. Just to get it rolling, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. Sounds like my marketing MO too. It's a bold claim.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to instigate, basically.
We'll see. So we went through, these 7 laws. Which law do you think is sort of the most foundational?
Definitely law one, because if we if you collapse the actors, then you lose all of the control. So we have to really understand and have discovery and observability about the pieces. Who's the actor? Who's the models that are out there? What are the MCP servers? What are the tools? What are the relationships? Schema pinning. So yeah, so I'd say number one is foundational, because you can't govern actors that you've collapsed. If you collapse the actors, then there's no ability to tease it apart and have even policy about it.
Right. So law one is split the actors, or split actor. So you're saying that we need to know the human, the software, the business units, the third parties, all of the entities, maybe a federation or a trust, some type of trust broker in the middle, the association of auto dealers or something that everyone's a member of, or the open banking implementation entity in the UK, something like that. So there could be all these like entities, software entities. We have APIs, we have MCP servers, we have clients. You're basically saying we need identifiers for each, and we need a good record of each, that each of these entities was actually involved. So we need a good authentication event, because unless we know the identifiers of all the entities involved, we cannot hold these entities accountable.
I mean, that's the long-term vision, is cross-organizational standardization. I mean, in the short term, ID JAG, or as Okta calls it, the new cross-app XAA standard, at least gives us a way that you can have authentication and handling of some authorization as an agent crosses organizational boundaries. So an agent from a foreign agent needs to access resources, let's say MCP tools within your organization. And IDJAG is a way to make that a little bit easier to bootstrap it. But then, cross-organizational standards is a long-term objective. But in the short term, you need to say, okay, if agents are going to enter in to my realm, my security realm, and access my resources, then I need to have my own registry of agents, trusted agent issuers. Like let's say I'm federating with Okta over IDJAG, then I'm going to have one OAuth client ID. I need to be able to dynamically say that when those agents come through, I know it's an agent. I'm going to put it registered in some trust level with some initial authorization or some claims mapping from whatever came through in the token, and grant it some initial access into my realm. And then I need in the same registry the MCP servers and tools that I'm protecting, and the ability to, and if it's a graph, to assign which agents have access to which tools on which MCP server, and which users as identities are in the graph that are related. But yeah, I'd say you at least need to get it to where within your own security realm, you can represent it and have policies. Some cross-realm thing where we all have standards and it's a third party is more of a long-term thing. But within the next 2 to 3 years, I think it's going to be, can I have foreign agents federated in and accessing resources within my environment and have visibility and control? And can my agents, federate and access external resources? So I think that's the short-term 2-year realistic goal.
Right. It's interesting because you went somewhere different than I went with that. I went to, we need to know all the entities involved so we can hold them accountable when things go wrong, like the humans, the software, the organizations, like the business units. Even if it's within our domain, we could have different business units, one business unit calling an MCP tool of another business unit. And you went straight to authorization. You went to, okay, I need to know who the people are so I can make policies about what they're allowed to access. But do you think that, so I guess my question is, going back to law one, is the split actor required for authorization, or is it required for accountability, or maybe both?
Both. I mean, because if you don't, I mean, you definitely can't have accountability if you've collapsed the actors and you don't know who really did it, and who triggered it, and who did it, and who executed it, and who gave them the credentials, who leaked the credentials. I mean, if you want the blame chain, you got to have the chain, or you can't assign the blame. I mean, but So it's necessary for that for sure, but you can't do authorization without it either, or it's going to be so coarse grained. It's just going to be basically dummy authorization. It won't protect anything.
Right. And that conversation we'll have to save for another episode. But, but I think I got your position. Um, and so, okay, I think that you're sort of using these laws laxly, but if they were laws, my question was, what if an agent, what if we align with 6 of them, not 7? Like, do you have to align with all of these laws? Like, if they're laws, they're the 10 commandments. I can't say commandment 2. So, is a subset of these laws okay?
I mean, basically, it would be in your risk register, and you would have to say you have a mitigation for it, like supply chain risk. If you're violating least exposure, you're not doing MCP tool schema pinning because you don't have a product for that or you don't want to deal with that, then you'd at least have to acknowledge the risk and mitigate it with some human follow-up. But yeah, I mean, there are at least checks to say, if I'm violating it, we at least need to not blindly just have no plan for it. We need to know that, maybe there's some manual workarounds or some manual checks we implement instead.
So which of these laws do you think enterprises are most guilty of violating right now?
Oh, I mean, almost no one has number 7. And the conversation isn't even there yet. And when I go to conferences, they're talking about the logs, and somehow they're going to magically get the resource server at the end of the chain to have a log that makes sense, where nobody up the chain is ever going to pass it the information. So that's just never going to happen. So almost everybody's violating number 7. People are starting to get the idea on 4, continuous authorization. People are looking at a gateway as like a magic bullet solution, which it isn't, but at least number 4 is getting some traction.
Well, the gateway, to push back a little bit on that, number 4 says basically zero trust. I read it as zero trust, that we're going to have authorization everywhere. And the gateway, by definition, is just authorization in one place. It might be one important place, but the idea of zero trust is I don't trust the gateway to do my authorization. I need to actually maybe look at the evidence and context myself. And as you said, maybe that context has changed because I've gotten new signals. And so...
Exactly. I mean, I think people are just hoping to check a checkbox by adding a gateway. But yeah, it's exactly like you said. It's zero trust. There are many more points of enforcement that need to happen. That a gateway is just one checkbox. It doesn't, in the chain, it's not going to cover you.
Yeah. I'll volunteer my opinion of one that enterprises are violating, but
Okay.
not because they want to, but because they our technology is insufficient. And that's your law number 1, the law,
number 1,
which is, the reason OAuth exists is we wanted to stop credential sharing. So this was one of the, not the reason, but one of the important drivers is we don't want you to share your password anymore. And we needed a way for software to be able to work on your behalf without impersonating you. And yet we have gone back to impersonation, where the AI agent actually might be using our credentials, or might be using the session in our browser, which is and actually impersonating us, and has basically found an end run around impersonation because it's more integrated with our browser stack, especially.
And it's terrifying because it's like it's like candy or sugar for kids. As soon as you get the magic OpenClaw or the agent to read your email and do a bunch of stuff, you quit thinking that you just gave it the ability to your raw token to do anything you want, anything it wants, or a lot of things you don't want that you wouldn't have thought about. So yeah, I mean, that is something that people are violating willingly just because it gives immediate satisfaction. And there are ways to stop that. I'll tell you right now, we have some, but there are ways to prevent that, to where the credential is never shared, always brokered. That you give them the authority without the access.
Right. and this is where I'm going to give enterprises a pass, and where I say, actually, the technology doesn't exist to do that well right now. So we have some new OAuth drafts, but not final standards, and we have too many of them. There's never been so many drafts proposing to solve a solution. I think because AI helps us to generate some of those drafts. Um, there's never been, even in the days of identity, when it was obvious to everyone that we'd use the web to authenticate people, and there was a whole bunch of standards that came up, like OpenID 1.0 and Liberty standards. There was like probably, but we have more volume. I think somebody told me that there was a draft being submitted like every other day in the OAuth working group.
I believe it. I believe it. Yeah.
And I had Nicholas Gallo on my live stream last Thursday, and he's proposing a new protocol called PIC, um, which talks about the continuity problem that you're talking about how do you prove a chain of sort of authorizations that so you can see sort of the history and prove the history and the provenance. And his paper reads like a math paper. Um, it's very actually I had to ask him about the math because I was not a math major. Um, and so but I mean it's a draft of a draft. I don't know, that's not close to getting developers to understand the complexity of that problem. So I don't know, I guess my question is um, do you have any thoughts about what's an enterprise to do given this importance of the law that you're expressing, and sort of how do they pick and choose like today, like what do you do?
I think you have to, the most critical ones you have to try to implement a solution for immediately. I mean, you have to discover what's out there. You can't manage what you can't measure. I think you have to try to protect the credentials. There are ways to do it. So you can do, what we do is we allow the users to do an OAuth authentication, and we can vault the OAuth token and a refresh token, and then the agent can be granted the authority, let's say, to read your Gmail inbox. But then it has the authority from the PDP. It'll say, yeah, you can, but the execution is had the broker, where only the broker can unvault and execute. And the agents never get credentials or secrets. They just get the data. So they get the result of the action. They can never execute the action. And then you plug that hole, basically.
So you mentioned an interesting scenario where the agent where you might need to authorize an action before the agent's intent exists. And maybe you can expand a little bit on that idea, and what do you mean by that exactly?
So let's say when a user utters something to an agent, the agent at that time, you don't know what it's going to actually do. So when you set up, and a lot of people set up general purpose agents, which I find problematic, because first off, if you provide a general purpose agent to be general purpose, it has to have too many capabilities or access to too many tools. And then also can't be very smart, because it's like a doctor. If they're a specialist, they're going to be very good at one thing, like onboarding or travel. If they're a generalist, then they're going to have a million tools. They're going to flood their context window all the time, and they're not going to be as smart or as effective. So if I'm a general purpose agent that has lots of tools, then I'm authorizing you in advance for these tools, but I could never imagine at the point of authorization what you might actually end up doing with that combination of tools. It's kind of like the mythos thing. You never know what's going to actually happen in the end, what creative solution is going to come up with, and what the execution of the action is going to be using the tools that you granted it, especially if it's an overly broad general purpose agent that has too many conflicting or should be segregated sets of tools, in my opinion.
That's an interesting point, because I've also been saying that I think the first generation of agents that we can trust will be relatively narrowly scoped.
Definitely.
A good example of your general agent is, did you see there was a video by the Wall Street Journal where Anthropic put in a vending machine into the journalist's lounge, and the staff of the Wall Street Journal would interact with the vending machine to buy stuff. And behind the scenes, one of the journalists was stocking it, by the way. The journalists at the Wall Street Journal, they tricked in both iterations, they tricked the vending machine into giving away all of its stuff for free.
Oh,
First, they convinced that it was a communist vending machine, and its mission was to I don't know, satisfy the will of the journalist, which was for free stuff.
Oh,
and then they put in a CEO bot to govern the vending machine. But then the journalists convinced the vending machine that the CEO bot was an imposter, and the CEO bot couldn't actually prove its credential, its authority. They sent in a fake charter for the vending machine corporation that said they must give all of the stuff for free. And so anyway, but I think that agent was particularly broadly scoped. And I joke that I think we're more likely to see agents that clean your pool than run a business, because a vending machine is almost like a little business. It was too broad. But
it is. A lot of the things came out of me trying to make agents actually useful, because I'm always pro new technology, and everybody was that agents were dumb for a long time. So I was trying to make specific, like an agent that can make an IGA connector and make it to where it can predictably generate good results. And the way to do that is that it has to be really, really focused. And one thing that grounding is super important. And grounding means that when you ask the agent, who are you? I have in identity, we have what we call the mirror test, where it needs to be able to be grounded and pass a mirror test about it knowing its identity, its laws, its rules, without it ever calling a tool or reading the system prompt. So it's like a lower level injection of its do's, don'ts, and its missions and its identity before it even gets to the system prompt kind of baked in. And then if you have that grounded agent, you can only ground it if it's very specialized or focused, because you can't ground it that you do everything. So single purpose agents, or they're specialists, they're easier to ground, then they're harder to trick, and then they're easier to control what they do and to produce predictable, more appearing deterministic results that are more easy to govern if you do that. So that was one of the tricks that I found to get reliable results from a complex task reproducibly, was that.
It's almost like you have to give the agent a soul.
Yeah, it has to know who it is without asking anybody. That's the mirror test. It has to not have to ask anybody or think about it to know exactly who it is. That's the injection of the grounding. It's like
Maybe I shouldn't go there. The soul is too loaded a philosophical concept probably for this piece of software.
We're going to end up in the Matrix subway scene, talking about I remember the man and his wife and his daughter, and he'd made his daughter, and she was software, but he was trying to get her out of there. An interesting scene where she had a soul. It was about the meaning of a soul.
I did rewatch The Matrix pretty recently, but no, maybe I need to watch it again, because I didn't appreciate that point. But maybe we should watch. It's always a good watch. So so human in the loop is presented as sort of I think a panacea, and I think you had some concerns about how human in the loop could sometimes be almost like a dangerous illusion of security.
It is, and it's an annoyance. Human in the loop is the low-tech solution to checking a checkbox. Basically, it's something that you should really have some intelligence about when human in the loop pops up, or else you've lost all the value of automation.
Yeah, and in a way, though, human in the loop only satisfies a subset of authorization decisions. It's a way to pop back to the human to get maybe consent about something that the agent is unclear about, whether your intent is unclear, and therefore it needs to clarify with the human what the intent was. But it seems to me like human in the loop is only a subset of authorization decisions might actually be solved by human in the loop.
Yeah, otherwise you'd have to gate every single step of an agentic process. And if, as you know, to reach an end goal, there are many, 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 many steps. So it would be, I mean, it would, and no one would ever use that. You'd be producing something that's just not useful. So yeah, human in the loop has to be an exception, has to be somehow risk weighted, and only where you really do need a human in the loop to provide missing data, or because of regulatory consent has to be, stamped at that point.
Right. Um, and I have to say I'm guilty sometimes of hitting authorize, authorize, authorize on cursor. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is owned by Elon Musk. So I don't know. Did you ever see the South Park episode where I think Kenny signs his iPhone contract and it consents to being part of a human centipede?
I
So,
do. I do.
so
I wish I never saw that. I wish I didn't know what human centipede was, because it pops into your
yes.
head in the weirdest moments. You're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a common theme in our family that we can't unsee human centipedes.
I,
But
wish,
we wish we could.
I wish I could. I saw two people walking on the beach, Scott, and I'm like, oh my God, just popped in your head. You're like, that's terrible. I want to
No.
know.
So, okay, so I mean, maybe we could finish the conversation. I think we're kind of getting the idea here. Maybe we could talk a little bit last conversation about how do we match the tool's description and the tool's behavior, because we're trying to authorize ahead of time to use certain tools, but that sort of depends on us knowing a little bit about the tools. And so, how do we sort of address that mismatch, that impedance mismatch?
Sure. So we have something we created. We call it CDA, or contract defined autonomy, or contract defined authorization. We kind of misuse it different ways. It's supposed to be contract defined autonomy. And what we do is we have agents that wrap APIs, database calls, LDAP calls, SSH calls, that wrap them as MCP tools. And when they wrap them, one of the agents, one of its tools that it has is it knows how to do CDA. And CDA is a metadata that per tool, per command. So let's say in your secret vault, if you're viewing a secret, then the metadata for that is going to have like X dash. We typically follow like the MCP elicitation, like X dash, and then whether or not human only, which means that it should never be disclosed to the model. You can have risk level. You can have always require human in the loop. You can have for parameters, so that the agent doesn't just stop and say, I don't know what to do, I have to ask a user. You can have auto suggest. You can have commonly used with. So basically, CDA is a way to wrap metadata around your tool definitions that can flow through MCP. And to make the consumer of it, the agent, seem super, super smart. So it knows how to auto-generate, knows what to redact, it knows what needs human in the loop. So we found a huge amount of value around that. Where if you wrap all of these in CDA annotations, then the agent, even if it's a cheaper model, seems like a genius and a better problem solver. And plus, you get the added benefit of all redaction, all these different things that are security just baked into your tool definitions. It's a huge win for us. It made, and basically the goal of getting agents to appear smarter because they can reliably solve the same problem the same way over time, and CDA makes that a big step forward.
Does it help you with reporting because you're capturing metadata about the tools?
Yep.
And then could you maybe also use that in order to generate sort of reports on the usage of those capabilities?
Yeah, and you can do some SOD at runtime. There's a lot of some interesting things you could do that ties back to our pre-conversation about capability definitions and risk analysis.
Right. Off in the green room, we were talking about capabilities in GovOps, and yeah, one of the theories of GovOps is we need more metadata about the capabilities in order to generate the reports and metrics that we need to understand risk.
Yeah. So in our model, CDA kind of ties together with what we call our operational ref model, because now when I have an agent wrap an IGA connector. Let's say it's the create CyberArk secret vault command. That command might be exposed as a route from the BFF, the backend for front end for web apps. It might be exposed as to another IGA system like EmpowerID or SailPoint, and it might be exposed as an MCP tool. So we need those three things from an authorization perspective not to be three things. So we have this, what we call the operation ref, which is kind of like an ARN, Amazon ARN type format for defining that, hey, these things are all the same thing from a capability perspective.
Well, the birds are flying. So we must be approaching 41 minutes. But before we break, I just want to give you a chance to say any last thoughts, or when might we see you next?
Let me think about that. I'll probably be at Gartner. I'm open to going to other conferences. I was looking around just to see what's going on. There's usually a lull this time of year. Happy to have online conversations. Had some interesting ones lately with Carl McGinnis and with George Fletcher and with some other people. So happy to keep that going. Ping me, DM me, or include me if you want to get my opinion or run anything by me. So happy to be involved in that, and always happy to come to a meetup if there's any that are nearby.
Well, maybe one event I'll suggest, just because I like hanging out with you, is the MCP Dev Summit through the Linux Foundation.
One of my people got a paper about agent mesh subdelegation spawning. She's going to be speaking there, so I might hop onto that one too. Then
yeah, that's in I forget what city in California. It's somewhere in California in October.
Okay, well that sounds good. I mean, I'd love to be somewhere in California in October.
It's a really interesting time for MCP right now, and the conference. I went to the one in New York in April, and I thought it would be a geeky little conference that no one attended, but like, I don't know, 1,500 people were there. It was really not small. So I don't know. It was a good one, and a lot's happening there right now.
We're pro MCP. I mean, even if it has its warts, I mean, it definitely serves a very useful purpose. So we're happy to have it.
So I'll just quickly remind everyone, if you don't know, we have a wiki page for every episode. So episode notes, glue.co/IOH- the episode number. This is episode 209. I want to quickly announce the next episode. Nikki from Snap will be on about attenuating agentic delegation tokens, something we referenced a little bit, but I don't know. We had an episode on it on Thursday. It's a tough topic. And so this is Nikki has to put forward one of those every other day drafts. But this one I thought was worth talking about. Not that the other ones aren't, but and then finally, quick reminder, follow the live stream. That helps us. We're trying to get to 3,000 followers. And with that, I will say, Patrick, it's been great getting a chance to visit with you over the summer.
Yeah. Oh, it was fun. I loved being able to connect. It was a lot of fun. Had great conversations, as we always do.
Donning a very stylish Hawaiian shirt, as consistent with your last.
This is my one with Elvis on here somewhere. It's a big Elvis. It's a Florida artist. He designed this shirt, so supporting my local art community.
Nice. So with that, I'll say thank you, Patrick. Thank you, audience, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. It was great. Thanks, Mike.